Hello, BookTube. It was a beautiful, crisp, clear, cloudless morning here. Just gorgeous. Boston was cool, but not cold, even in the pre-dawn hour. And so I knew that the early morning was going to be absolutely beautiful. So I did what anyone would do. I went to the Brattle bookshop. I went to a used bookstore in downtown Boston, where I am well acquainted. I've been going there a long time. There's a great used bookstore. It also has a great added feature, which is the sale lot outside. Thousands more books for $1, $3, or $5. So that when you're browsing out there in the sale lot, you really don't have to think about money. Really, you don't. You're going to run out of carrying capacity before you're going to run out of cash if you stick to the sale lot. Although the prices inside are perfectly reasonable too. And I went first thing, and I got a pile of books. Just a pile of books. Now, in my defense, as I always do, I want to point out that I'm not hoarding here. I'm not expecting to keep all of these books. The ideal situation at the Brattle is always that you are finding keepers, that you're finding books that will be in your permanent book collection, but that doesn't always happen. That doesn't even mostly happen. Because things are so cheap in the sale lot, I can take a flyer on things I know nothing about. I can try things where I don't have any disposition one way or the other to like them or not. That's very nice, but that definitely leads to a circumstance where I have books that are coming in that are not staying. It's fine by me. That is certainly going to be true of a lot of these books. Like, for instance, let's start with the mass market paperbacks. This first one is technically a Dre Prescott novel. This is Seg the Bowman. You can see there the terrifying number 32. This is an old Daw paperback. Ordinarily, this would be yellow, bright yellow. This one's not, but I love that cover. Do we have a credit for the cover? Probably not. In these benighted old days, they did not credit the cover art. Oh no, Ken Kelly is the cover artist here. That is just awesome. That is a fantastic cover. And if I remember correctly, this is The Finest Archer of Two Worlds, Champions a Princess of Dreams. If I remember correctly, that cover, that terrifying cover number of 32, these are all Antares novels. And they go on endlessly. There are 100 of them. If I remember correctly, though, this is a standalone. This is not about Dre Prescott. It's about his friend Seg. Not to be confused with Seg L. From my late lamented TV show Krypton. Seg L, the grandfather of Kal-El of Krypton, the grandfather of Superman, played by Cameron Cuff. Boston's own Cameron Cuff, who, well, I'm certainly hoping that he has huge things in his future. He is a heck of a guy, a heck of a kid. Not as much of a reader as I was like, but a thoroughgoing dog person. But you were not confusing Seg the Bowman with Seg L of Krypton. This is a high fantasy story. I haven't read all of these Antares books at all. I haven't even come close. I once had a huge number of them in the old Daw yellow mass market paperbacks, but I don't think I've ever read this one. So I'll give it a try. Absolutely. It's fantasy, and fantasy is akin to science fiction, right? The next one is also fantasy of a very odd type. I don't think I ever read this 10 years ago. Was this 10 years ago? That's going to go by fast. Is that when this was? Yeah, a little more than that. 2011. Once upon a time, in 2011, there was a Conan the Barbarian movie. It starred Jason Momoa. And I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was really good. A couple of arresting visual sequences and a better characterization of Conan than had ever been put on film before, very much including the Schwarzenegger movies. And the movie studio had high hopes. Everybody had high hopes. I had high hopes that by now would be on our 6th Conan movie. Such was not to be. Such was not to be. The movie, I don't think, seriously flopped, but it did not gain a loyal following. It did not provoke a sequel. But it provoked everything else. Tons and tons of merchandising, tons and tons of reprints and whatnot, including the novelization of the movie. Conan the Barbarian. I don't know if you could read that, by Michael Stackpole, based on a screenplay written by Thomas Dean Donnelly and Joshua Oppenheimer and Sean Hood. What name is missing from the cover of this Conan the Barbarian book? Robert E. Howard. is missing. That was the poster, Conan standing on a mountain of skulls. It looks like this has pictures. Yes, it does. This has pictures. Let me see if we can get you a shot of Conan. There is Ron Perlman as Conan's father. The movie has a fantastic opening sequence, sort of testing the young men who want to be warriors for the Sumerian tribe where Conan grows up. A fantastic opening sequence involving every one of them has to put an egg in their mouth, and they have to go through all the hardships of this ritual without breaking the egg. The movie studio had the inspired idea of making that whole sequence into a kind of trailer for the movie. And I don't see how you could not want to watch the movie if you watch that sequence. It goes on for, I think, 5 or 6 minutes. Is brilliant. Just brilliant. Well, okay, it's kind of odd that we don't have any really good shots of Conan in... Well, there's one shot of Jay Momoa as Conan. Here we have him on horseback. Another shot. It's a shame. I wish that this movie had done better. I enjoyed it. But I don't recall that I ever read this book. Michael Stackpole, of course, is a famous science fiction author, probably a big Conan fan. Going to be kind of weird to read. I mean, I guess not as weird as you might think, right? There's a mountain of Conan Pastiche novels. It's just that something about it seems like it should have Robert E. Howard's name all over it. I've read many Conan Pastiche novels. I don't think I've ever read this one. So I'll give it a try, absolutely. Considering, that we're talking about $1, you can take a risk. Like this next one, if it had any kind of a price tag on it, I would probably have skipped it. But it was $1, so I grabbed it. This is by Edmund Hamilton, who I swear, until I started running across him literally everywhere in book form, I only knew him for his creative genius in the Legion of Superheroes, my beloved Legion of Superheroes. His science fiction, it never occurred to me to read his science fiction, his Captain Future novels. But I found another Captain Future novel, The Comet Kings. I ask you, how was I supposed to pass up a cover like that? The tagline on the cover says, "Trapped in the blazing depths of Halley's Comet, the future men battle four-dimensional monsters." And that's just one single sentence, and yet it has 4 or 5 different things in it that'll just make you say, the author of this doesn't know anything about science at all. It doesn't matter to me. I have now read 2 of these little Captain Future novels. They must be coming from the same collection and just be coming out into the sale lot of the Brattle in dribs and drabs. I find it hard to believe that these are coming from any more than one person. But I read 2 of these. The Future Men are so hokey. As I mentioned, these are basically Westerns. These are basically Western novels. Now, this one takes place deep in the heart of Halley's Comet and deals with 4-dimensional monsters, so maybe this has more science fiction than Western in it. It won't take long to do. This is New Worlds November that we're coming up on. New Worlds November is heading into its 2nd year. That's a big deal. That's lots and lots of fun. Certainly that is all the cause that I need to overdose on science fiction. Like, for instance, these next 2 I've never read. And they are technically science fiction. This is, they're by A. Bertram Chandler, and this is book 1 in the adventures of John Grimes, who is a spacefaring man-at-arms in the future. Kind of a weird, intriguing cover, I think. This has The Road to the Rim and The Hard Way Up. And the description on the back is that someday Grimes will be a Commodore in the secessionist Rim World's Navy, but for now he's merely a very junior lieutenant in another space navy entirely, that of the Federation, but not Kirk's Federation. If he keeps his nose clean, one day he can be admiral in that service. All he has to do is follow regulations, regardless of the consequences, and obey orders regardless of whether they are right or wrong. And he is determined to do just that. But of course, he won't do just that. And when I read that description, I thought, well, okay, so you're following... The point of these novels is to follow one man through the ranks of his military advancement in one navy, so-called, or another. And naturally, I thought of Horatio Hornblower. C.S. Forster's character, Horatio Hornblower, who we follow in exactly that way, through in the Napoleonic era on the seas of Earth, rather than in space. But that's the pattern that exists there, and then it's taken up by a whole bunch of other Napoleonic seafaring writers. And I thought the correspondence here was probably a little accidental, but no, no. A. Bertram Chandler dedicates this first book to Horatio Hornblower. He doesn't even dedicate it to Forster. He dedicates it to a fictional character. So I think it's going to be very explicitly Hornblower in space. And I also, just for good measure, since it was $1, and who knows what kind of hokey fun it will be, I got book 2 as well, The Inheritors and Gateway to Never, which follows John Grimes. I assume he was a cunning, ruthless opportunist who paid when he had to and stole when he could, but never when there was the slightest chance of getting caught. That's what had John Grimes worried. Here was Kane directly under watchful eyes and guns of a Federation survey vessel, openly engaging in kidnapping and trafficking in human flesh. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to what extent will these be science fiction? It sounds like they're going to have the slightest trappings of science fiction, but they will mostly be Horatio Hornblower, just like I have found that Edmund Hamilton's so-called science fiction is usually just a Western, with barely any level of just changing around the props. That doesn't really make it science fiction if you just change around the props. But I don't know about these at all. Have any of you ever heard of these things? I've never seen them before. So I'll give it a try, and I'll plow my way through both volumes. Then this next one is still science fiction, I want to point out. I know that some of you will bridle at that, but nevertheless, this is one of those Avenel Omnibus volumes, what BookTube insists weirdly on calling bind-ups. It's an omnibus volume of a type that I've shown you before on Brattle Halls. Avenel used to do they did a whole bookcase of these things, where they would have cover artwork, and it would be a fat volume, and they would put 3 or 4 or 5 works by an author in that volume. I've seen them for all kinds of authors, and I love them. You really got your money's worth with these old Avenel volumes. But I grab them whenever I can, but I don't see them as often as I would like to. If you see one, grab it and send it to me. But this one, this would be high on a list of ones that I would want to grab anyway. This is the Avenel Omnibus volume of Tarzan. So you have Tarzan of the Apes, The Son of Tarzan. That's what actually sold me on that, because The Son of Tarzan is my favorite Tarzan novel. Tarzan at the Earth's Core, and Tarzan Triumphant. Tarzan Triumphant I have not read in, I don't even know how long it's been. I don't even know. It's been 30 or 40 years. So there's reading to be done in here, and another thing that's really attractive about this volume is that it's illustrated all throughout. And the illustrations are different from volume to volume. Let's see here. The Son of Tarzan and Tarzan at the Earth's Core are drawn by J. Allen St. John, who was Burroughs' own favorite artist. But then Tarzan Triumphant is drawn by Studley Burroughs, who was Edgar Rice Burroughs' nephew, and is not all that good an artist. He does one here. And then this volume also mentions that Esteban Maroto does illustrations for Tarzan of the Apes. Esteban Maroto has simply got to have a background in comic books. He's simply got to. His illustrations look nothing like the other two. Since I've got this in front of you, see, that is an illustration of his for Tarzan of the Apes. That owes everything in its genesis to comic books, and not to, for instance, magazine periodical illustrations where you would learn at an art school and whatnot. Another example, yeah, there's Tarzan killing a lion. That is very much a comic book thing, or maybe Russ Manning. Whereas, let's get you an example of Studley's artwork. It's not anything to write home to Tarzana about, but I'm sure that he was a nice guy. I'm sure that he, see there, a little bit on the wooden side, little Gibson girl-esque, and not much. Whereas the artwork by Burroughs' own favorite artist is amazing. I wonder if I can find an example of that really quickly in here. You can definitely see why. Yeah, look at that. Incredible. Just incredible. You can definitely see why he would be Burroughs' favorite. So I found one of these. This is what I mean. These Avenel Omnibus volumes. I have a bunch of them. I have The Thin Man. I have Jeeves and Wooster. I have Miss Marple, I think. Now I have Tarzan. There's another volume. There's another Avenel reprint volume that is Edgar Rice Burroughs. It's not just Tarzan. It's got, I think, 3 John Carter of Mars novels and 1 Pellucidar novel, I think. I saw that at the Brattle about 2 years ago, but it was in such horrible condition, the thing was actually falling apart. It wasn't just a dust jacket, the book was falling apart. So I had to leave it. And once upon a time, a few years ago, I don't think it was at the Brattle. I think it was at another used bookstore, and I didn't like the price they were asking. I had the big fat volume of John le Carré in my hand and didn't get it. Could kick myself about that, but you will make do, because this weekend you will go to your local Savers, you will find 1 or 2 of these, and you will send them to me. Because I am a sexy influencer. So I'm very happy to find this, and I will put it to use by reading Tarzan Triumphant this weekend. Where are we going to put things here? I think that does it for science fiction. Yeah, that does it for science fiction. Then we have just an ordinary mass market paperback adventure story of a type that I think I would have passed on if not for BookTube and subsequent events in BookTube. Mark Richardson doesn't make as many BookTube videos as I would like anymore. He's mighty busy. If you were as busy as he was, you wouldn't make them either. But getting to know his taste is the same. It's the same phenomenon as you find with any BookTuber. You start to listen to people. You start to visit with them when they have videos. You start to get an estimate of what they're like. And if the person on the other end of the camera is completely genuine, so they're not trying to sell you anything, they're not acting fake, they're not spazzing out, they're not anything like that, then you're immediately going to start to notice, okay, so I can listen to you. You're not a phony baloney. But our tastes are different. And then you start, so your hackles go up just a little, because we're all a little territorial of our tastes. And then you start to think, well, no, that's not how it works. If Sean Standfast is going on and on about how much he likes author X, Y, or Z, having watched 10 hours of his videos, I can't ignore that anymore. Same thing was definitely true with me and Mark Richardson long before I went up to visit him and the Richardson family up in Vermont. And one of the authors that came up from time to time, Mark doesn't think he's Tolstoy, but from time to time, one of the authors that came up is an author I'd completely dismissed in my own reading. And that's Clive Cussler. I'd read probably 6 of them and thought, well, they were competently done, but that's about it. You see somebody, I mean, Mark likes the Dirk Pitt, the Clive Cussler novels, and that changes the way you think. You start to think, oh, well, maybe the next time one of those crosses my path, I'll read it again. For no other reason than that we are getting to know each other's tastes and starting to influence each other. There's no other reason at all. We're all on the hunt for books that we could enjoy. None of us are trying to impress anybody else. So if somebody gets up on camera, whether it's Mark Richardson or Gina Stanier gets up and starts talking about Rosamund Pilcher or Miss Reed, you might have read those authors once or dismissed them as books you give to your mother or a maidenly aunt. All of a sudden you hear someone whose videos you watch and enjoy talking about these things in detail, and you think, well, maybe I should give that another try. Maybe I should give that another try. So I made a sort of decision with myself that if I did that, if I were going to do that, I knew what I wanted. I want the Clive Cussler mass market paperbacks with step-back artwork. I don't want any later reprints. I certainly don't want any hardcovers, because I'm not sure I'm ever going to love these things as much as Mark. But I found one today, Pacific Vortex. And this is what I mean by a step back. You have the front cover, and then through the portal that you've got there, you have the actual artwork of the cover. I like that. I just do. And I figure, I can wait. This is not an urgent thing. So I'll just wait until I see them in the format that I like. I found this today. I think this is like the 3rd or 4th Dirk Pitt adventure. Oh, no. Mediterranean Caper, Vixen 03, Night Probe, Iceberg, and Raise the Titanic all came before this one. Raise the Titanic was one that I wish that I could find, even though it's utterly silly. Utterly silly. The physics involved of what's going on at the heart of the book, of a book called Raise the Titanic, could not possibly happen. Not in the slightest. But even so, I remember that one being terrifically effective. So blame Mark Richardson. I will read Pacific Vortex sometime before the end of the year. I will read Pacific Vortex, and if I don't like it, I'll blame him. Then we have a biography, a little thing. This was done for Christopher Morley. John Morley did an English Men of Letters series, which is, it's still going on. Not English Men of Letters, but the idea is still going on. Publishers are always striking on the idea of, what if I give you a brief series of short biographies along a theme? Men of Letters, American Statesmen, Penguin Brief Lives, that sort of thing. Under the assumption that John and Jane Q. Public like reading biographies, but don't have the mental wherewithal, the bandwidth, or the free time to commit to a 900-page book. That is the rationale behind these series, and they can be fun. They often, like if some of you remember the Penguin Live series, you'll know what I'm talking about. They often end up pairing biographer with subject in ways that academically vetted, university press 900-page biographies absolutely will not do. Which means you can get Larry McMurtry writing about Crazy Horse. It means you can get Edmund White writing about, I think, Marcel Proust, he did for the Penguin Brief Live series. Or, in the latest example, is it Princeton University Press has a new Ancient Lives series. Again, they'll be short. They'll be 200-page biographies. And they're all figures from the ancient world. I almost think that what they're doing is just going through Plutarch's Parallel Lives and giving us a 200-page biography of every person in there. The first 3 are about to come out. They come out in November. And 2 of them are by classical historians, James Romm and Peter Stothard. But one of them is by Francine Prose. The 200-page biography of Cleopatra is by Francine Prose. Same thing. I love that sort of thing, and I don't care how old they are. I found one that's very old today. I found J.A. Simmons doing a biography of Sidney, of Sir Philip Sidney. Tiny little thing. See, the English Men of Letters, edited by John Morley. This is Sidney. It'll be just it won't be any of the major works. It'll just be of Simmons. It'll just be a very, very, very smart writer doing one of these biographies in a series. Morley probably gave him 2 months and £200. And if you are John Addington Symonds, what do you do if that's true? The choices can vary as much as the authors can. Some authors will get a brief like that, drink the money right away, do no research, and simply write a kind of trot full of aphorisms and unverified history and whatnot. Like, for instance, if you were going to do a series like this and you tapped Anthony Burgess to do such a thing, you probably wouldn't get a book that was scholarly representational. Simmons, you might, very well. And I couldn't help but notice when I was looking at this thing, I'm always curious about the journeys that books take to get to me. This is signed, I can't read the signature, but it says 1930 was a time when someone had this book. When did this come out? Did that person buy? No, this came out in 1909. So that person wasn't the first owner. And look at that. Higginbotham's booksellers, Madras and Bangalore. Isn't that incredible? Who knows what kind of a journey this book had? I find Philip Sidney absolutely fascinating. And I also find Simmons fascinating, so it's a perfect combination. Then this next one is one that I often pass on. And I don't know why. I looked at it today and I thought, why do you often pass on that? You really, really like it. Why don't you want to keep it? You're going to want to reread it. So I grabbed it, and I will reinforce it. I will protect it. I'll put a protective dust jacket on it, and I will just keep it with the other representational volumes. This is Stephen J. Gould. That is Stephen J. Gould. And this is An Urchin in the Storm. Essays about books and ideas, and that when I saw that today at the Brattle, because these are a lot of times about books, including quasi-reviews of some new popular science volumes. Stephen J. Gould was a popular science writer and communicator, a fixture in Harvard Yard. And when I saw that, I remembered that I've always enjoyed this. I just have never kept a copy. So this will go with... I have a shelf of Stephen J. Gould. These are infinitely revisitable. It's just a collection of essays. So I don't know why. This is one of the luxuries of the Brattle Bookshop, is that you get presented with multiple copies of things, over the years, if you go back regularly enough, so that if you make a bad decision years later, the Brattle will provide. You will see that book again in another used bookstore with far less buying going on. Brattle van is out all the time buying. In another used bookstore, you might see a copy like that, and you could go back every week for the entire life of the shop. You'd never see it again. With the Brattle, almost certainly not. Although, that having been said, this is the first time that I've ever seen this next one. This is by Burton Raffles, who achieved fame and also island-buying wealth with his translation of Beowulf. This is his volume, The Essential Horace, in hardcover. I have this in trade paperback, and I'm afraid to touch it. I tried reading through it once, and it didn't look to me like it was going to survive, and I've never seen it. I've never seen it used, not even another paperback. I would have gotten another paperback just, so that when I eventually destroy the one I have, I at least have a backup. Hardcover's not going anywhere. This is all, I don't think it's even bilingual, right? Yeah, this isn't even bilingual. This is all just Burton Raffles, who's translated a lot by now. I mean, he's done a lot. And I'm a fan of his Beowulf. I don't at the moment have a copy of his Beowulf, but I'm a fan of it. It's very much one man. It's very much one aesthetic sense. So, I don't want to make a huge disquisition on the art of translation, but I often talk about, what is the translator's job? And I often say how grateful I am when I'm reading a translated work if the translator is not, so to speak, in the room. And this will be the exact opposite of that. This will be Burton Raffles doing Horace. So he will not only be in the room, but Horace won't be. It'll be a game of telephone. That old game of telephone. And Horace won't be in the room. It'll just be Burton Raffles giving you his impressions of these poems. I am okay with that. This is a very erudite translator, a very good prose stylist, and I now have the hardcover. I can gently retire my paperback. Wonderful. Almost certainly the find of the day. Then this next one is part of a weird little fad with books that I wish were universal. There's been about 6 of them, but I could stand there to be 36 of them. I got the advanced copy of this thing from the publisher, then I got the finished copy, got rid of both of them. I found a hardcover of this a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, in the lifetime of this channel. One of you saw it, I sent it to you. So I just grab it whenever I find it. Again, that's the luxury of the Brattle, of constant overturn of stock, is that you are going to see copies of things again. This is by Claudia Renton, and it is her great book, Those Wild Wyndhams, about the 3 sisters in John Singer Sargent's famous portrait. This and the subset of books of which this is a member are books that are written about the subjects of Sargent portraits. There have been about 6 of them, including the infamous Madame X. I could stand there to be a lot more. Sargent, in my opinion, as I have said on this channel many times, is one of the greatest portrait painters ever to live. And staring at one of his great paintings, this is one of his greatest paintings, it's gigantic, it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, you could just go and spend an hour staring at it. I think once upon a time in the dim and distant past, I actually did that. Where I had planned to make a sort of a beeline for the ancient world section of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Instead, I just stood in front of this thing until it was time for my friend to collect me for lunch. I think I've done that before. But this is a story of they were the daughters of Percy Wyndham. They were the daughters of wealth and privilege, access to the highest rungs of British society. I loved this book when it first came out. When was that? 2018, or maybe 2014. I'm not 100% sure, but it was, I think, number 1 on my list of the best nonfiction of the year that year, or real close to it. In beguiling the job that this author does in unearthing the lives of these 3 women when they were much older than they are in this portrait, where they went in their lives, whether or not any of it, it's not a point that she stresses over much, but whether or not any of it could be foretold from the wisdom of the artist here in the portrait. I love this. And it joins the little group of books about subjects of Sargent portraits. I have a few of them. I've never known a book like that to disappoint me. odd as it is. Then we'll finish up with, in the best possible way to finish up a Brattle book haul, we'll finish up with a Donahue. I found 2 books by the late great critic Dennis Donahue. The first is England, Their England. This is a collection of book reviews that he did of various biographies, reissues of classics, that sort of thing, all on English literature. Just collected into one, heavy-duty book, one wonderful book. There's quite a bit in here that I really, really like. And I keep getting rid of it. I got a whole bunch of Dennis Donahue 3 or 4 years ago on this channel once again. And once again, one of you saw it and sang me your same old song. I'm such a sucker for you people. I swear that all you have to do is send me an email saying, "Oh, I really like the look of that. How I wish I could read it. I had it once upon a time. I loved it more than any book in the world. But I can't get out much, and I live in a book desert. The nearest bookstore is 600,000 miles away. I need a starship to get there. But oh no, don't worry about me." You know perfectly well what I'm going to do, and I do it every time, which is why so many of my Brattle acquisitions are rebuys. The same thing with this one. We'll finish up with the second Dennis Donahue volume. This is The Practice of Reading. Just another volume of miscellaneous literary pieces by this author. I've had this book a few times, and I love it. It's my favorite Dennis Donahue book. No offense to his book on T.S. Eliot. I am trying with that book, but give me something like this any day. These two will immediately go, well, after a little bit of rereading, they will immediately go on the huge shelf of books about books, of collections of book reviews, that sort of thing. The England, Their England was a review copy from a long time ago when this is what you got. And it was this, "Please do not run your review before publication date, but somewhere on here," yeah, here we go, "we would appreciate receiving 2 copies of your review." In other words, once your review comes out, you get a copy from your editor, you buy a copy on the stands, you clip out your review, you fold them and put them in what was known as an envelope, you put what was known as postage on it, and you mail it to Knopf. Because they're going to want to keep a copy, and they're also going to want to run a copy of your review. And it also came with a little card. Not a pub sheet like the kind that we always see. And I can't help but love the sentiments involved. We've got John Hollander, we've got Irving Howe, we've got a blurb from Booklist. Booklist says, "Donahue is a joy to read." Can't really argue with that, can I? "Donahue is a critic I read with continuous pleasure." Unfortunately, it's not this Donahue, it's this other Donahue, but still, that sheet will form an excellent bookmark in this volume. So what a way to end a Brattle haul, right? On a double blast of Donahue. What better bookstore in the world to find Donahues at than the Brattle Bookshop? So how are we going to do this? We have 2 Dennis Donahue volumes. We have those Wild Wyndhams. Very happy to have this again. I could kick myself when I come across a volume like this and can't for the life remember why I got rid of it. Then we have The Essential Horse, another translation by Burton Raffles. I must have half a dozen translations by him. We have Tarzan of the Apes in an Avenel 1-volume omnibus. We have An Urchin in the Storm by Stephen J Gould, to go with Hen's Teeth and Horse's Hooves and the Flamingo's Smile and Bully for Brontosaurus and all that sort of stuff. We have Sydney by J.A. Simmons, an old biography, over a century old. Then a bunch of mass markets. Pacific Vortex by Clive Cussler. The Adventures of John Grimes by A. Bertram Chandler. 2 fat volumes of science fiction for New World's November. We have The Comet Kings by Edmund Hamilton, another adventure of Captain Future and the Future Man, also for New World's November. We have Conan the Barbarian by by Robert Stackpole. And finally, Seg the Bowman, not to be confused with Seg L of the planet Krypton. A terrifically fun Brattle visit. Not a cloud in the sky, just lovely as could be. I had a blast. And it was also fun to go in and chat with everybody and whatnot. And I wasn't gone that long. My bean was not missing me. So that was the Brattle for today. Maybe another Brattle trip this week. You never know. It all depends on deadlines, but the deadlines they're no match for me. Not this week anyway. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.